discuss أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ziaullah. Today we will discuss the another half of the shark, that is the management of the shark. Previously we discussed the pathophysiology and different types of sharks. So today we will discuss shortly the management of shark. Shark management is the most important thing in the life of a doctor at any level. If you cannot treat shark, recognize and treat shark timely, then it's a disaster. Rather, if patient is just dying of shark, it's a type of murder. So we will discuss in detail. We already discussed the different types of sharks and its pathology. We will briefly discuss again. So, shark is a syndrome characterized by decreased tissue perfusion and impaired cellular metabolism. This is the imbalance between supply and demand of oxygen and nutrients for the cells. We have already classified the shark and it's discussed its pathophysiology. That is the low blood flow shark, it's cardiogenic or hypovolemic shark, and there is maldistribution of shark. And this category is three types are there: septic, anaphylactic, and neurogenic shark. We will discuss its signs, symptoms, and briefly its management. So, first of all, we will discuss hypovolemic shark. And hypovolemic shark, there are multiple causes of hypovolemia, but the management is the same. And there is loss of intravascular fluid volume, which may be due to hemorrhage, due to GI loss, especially during vomiting and diarrhea. There may be a high output fistula, drainage, and diabetes insipidus, and hyperglycemia. There may be diuresis. There is another term which is called relative hypovolemia. Results when the fluid volume moves out of the vascular space into extravascular space, interstitial or intracavitary. It is termed as third spacing. It is most important cause of hypovolemic shock in the surgical patient because there is no revealed bleeding or revealed fluid loss. It is concealed and it is going into interstitium or intracavitary, especially in the peritoneum cavity. It is called third spacing. Response to acute volume loss depends on the extent of the injury or insult, age of the patient, and general state of the health. In hypovolemic shock, first of all, we will we will recognize which type of shock is this. Whenever you approach to a patient which seemingly is in shock, you should firstly recognize by signs, symptoms, and brief history, especially the previous history, that which type of shock is this, because the management is different and different type of shock. In hypovolemic shock, the patient is in anxiety, and there is tachypnea. So there is increased heart rate and decreased stroke volume. If less than 30% of blood volume is replaced, the clinical feature of hypovolemia or anxiety, tachypnea, when you examine the patient will be, if it is a early shock, patient will be anxious, there will be tachypnea, you should count the respiratory rate, and there will be tachycardia. There will be cold extremities. The patient, when the shock progresses, the patient may be confused and then comatose. When this hypovolemia goes into, and there will be a definite history of hemorrhage, either concealed or revealed, or there will be definite history of diarrhea or something. You should take the history first and then see the patient. And this is the recognition of the shock. There is another type of shock which is neurogenic. And this hemodynamic phenomena that occurs within 30 minutes of spinal cord injury at 5th thoracic level or above and can last up to 6 weeks. results when the fifth thoracic vertebra e.g. causes there is a sympathetic tone loss, and this result in massive vasodilatation leading to pooling of blood in the vessels. The blood is there, it is intravascular, but there is pooling in the dilated vessels. Its clinical feature, they especially ask this in viva, and especially you should recognize this. There are three, there will be bradycardia. In all types of the patient, there is tachycardia, and response to which, in response to sympathetic stimulation, there will be tachycardia and all other kinds. But there, the sympathetic tone is lost here, so there will be bradycardia and hypotension and temperature dysregulation. There will be dry skin. Pykiliothermia, that is the temperature of the environment. The patient takes the temperature of the environment. Then we will discuss another type of shock, which is anaphylactic shock. An anaphylactic shock, there will be, it is life-threatening hypersensitivity reaction to anything. There will be brief history of any IV injection, or maybe some insect bite. Even some oral medication can cause anaphylactic shock. Even some foods can cause anaphylactic shock. We have discussed its pathophysiology in previous lecture, but there it is life-threatening hypersensitivity. There is massive vasodilatation and the release of mediators. The capillary permeability increase. So there is the clinical signs symptoms of this is patient again is an anxiety status. There is confusion and dizziness. The patient will be tachypneic and tachycardic and hypotension. The differential thing here is the patient will be wheezing or there will be stridor because because of the respiratory system involvement. All the mediators causes the that is a bronchoconstriction and sense of impending doom. The patient says that he is just suffocating, and there will be severe chest pain. Other types of allergic reaction, other signs symptoms will be there, like swelling of lips, tongues, and angioedema. Again, wheezing and stridor is also allergic. There will be flushing of the skin, pruritus, and urticaria. Respiratory distress is there. The third type of shock is septic shock. It is again the type of distributor shock when there is no loss of fluid, but it is because of sepsis. There is a redistribution of the fluid, which is which causes shock. There's a presence of sepsis with hypotension. The definition is this: despite fluid resuscitation, there will be the tissue perfusion will be abnormal. Its mortality is more than 50% if it is not recognized earlier and treated accordingly. The primary causative organism are, again, they ask this in viva question, that gram-negative are more important, and then gram-positive. All other endotoxin producing bacteria also causes this inflammatory response. Clinical feature, again, there is hyperdynamic state and hypodynamic state. This is again, and contrary to the hypovolemic shock, the patient will be warm and there will be bounding pulse. There is increased cardiac output and decreased peripheral vascular resistance. There will be tachypnea, hyperventilation. The patient will hyperventilate, which causes alkalosis rather than acidosis. All other shocks, there is acidotic fluid. So the temperature is dysregulated, the urine output is less, and again I will stress that there will be a definite history of sepsis due to any cause. Maybe there will be wound, there will be any sepsis, septicemia, and hypotension, and there will be GI dysfunction. Respiratory failure is again common here. We can discuss the management of shock in another way. That is the initial stage of the shock. Usually, no clinical apparent sign symptoms are there because there is compensation mechanism for this. It is compensated shock. Metabolic changes from anaerobic to aerobic. Lactic acidosis accumulate, must be removed by the blood and broken down by liver. process require unavailable oxygen. And compensatory stage non-progressive, it is clinically apparent. Again, if we remember from the pathophysiology, there is neural, hormonal, and biochemical compensatory mechanism. The body attempts to overcome the consequences of anaerobic metabolism and maintaining hemostasis. If perfusion deficit corrected at this stage and compensatory stage, the patient recovers with no residual sequelae. If deficit is not corrected, patient enter into progressive stage. And it is very unfortunate for the patient if he progresses in the presence of any clinician into progressive stage when the compensation mechanism fails. There must be aggressive intervention to prevent multiple organ dysfunction. Hallmark of progressive stage is decreased cellular perfusion and altered capillary permeability. So there is edema and leak of interstitial fluid. If severe generalized edema, it is called anasarca. When this fluid moves into alveoli, there is edema, decreased surfactants, and worsening ventilation perfusion mismatch. There will be tachypnea, crackles, and difficult breathing. These signs symptoms. If cardiac output begins to fall, there is decreased peripheral perfusion, hypotension, weak peripheral pulses, and ischemia of distal extremities. There will be ulcer and bleeding in GI. If in liver, there will be jaundice and elevated enzymes. A risk of DIC. Renal failure or acute tubular necrosis here. The third stage is irreversible refractory stage. There is accumulation of lactic acid, profound hypotension and hypoxemia, tachycardia worsens, and cerebral ischemia ensues. So there is failure of one or more organ systems and recovery is unlikely. So whenever you see the patient, again, I will stress that we should first, by brief previous history and by physical examination, we will first of all we will see which type of shock is this. And the next stage is with this we will continue the management. There are four types of shocks. The most common, the commonest cause is that is a hypovolemic shock. So there will be a history of hemorrhage or other things, but you should continue the management with this. Sign symptoms you should see, but also continue the management. The first and all things is ABC of the patient. You should correct the ABC. Whether it is progressive stage, it is initial stage RR, you should see whether the airway is patterned, the patient is breathing normally, and most after and hypovolemic shock, you should correct the hypovolemia. That is, you should stress on circulation. So you should see whether the patient is in hypotension. You should see the capillary refill. If there is no pulse palpable, then you should palpate the carotid. If carotid is there, so the patient is the systolic BP is 90. But if even the carotid is not palpable, then the patient is the systolic BP is less than 90, and you should continue the management. The first and the most important thing is you should seek the IV access, but not that small gauge cannula. You should at least the recommended is 14 or 16 gauge to large bore cannulae, but if it is not available, at least 18 or 16 gauge cannula, you should there must be access. If it is pediatric patient and you cannot access immediately, then you should try intraosseous route because it takes just 20 seconds from the bone to fluid into circulation. But you should there must be immediate access IV access, and whatever fluid is available. The ideal is any fluid which is lost should be replaced with that fluid. But if at hand you have any fluid, you should go for that. And the successful management of the patient of the shock is the identification of the patient at risk for shock and the history, physical examination, and clinical finding. If it is hypovolemic shock, then you should take an IV axis and then continue fluids. There are two types of fluids, crystallites and colloids. There is no gross difference in crystallite and colloid. They say that colloid remains intravascularly more for more time. But whatever fluid is available, the ideal is ringer lactate or normal saline. For every 1 ml estimated loss, you should replace 3 ml of 3 ml of that fluid. Either normal saline, but not hypotonic solution. That is isotonic solution. You should infuse. You should ensure patient airway and maximum oxygen delivery. Give oxygens. Cornerstone of therapy for septic, hypovolemic, and anaphylactic shock is volume expansion. This is the most important thing in the shock management, volume expansion. That is isotonic crystallites, for example, normal saline for initial resuscitation of the shock. Volume expansion may be achieved by if the patient doesn't respond to 2 or 3 liters of crystallite, blood administration and central venous monitoring may be ensued. The complication of fluid resuscitation is hypothermia, which can be avoided by warm fluids, and coagulopathy. With fluids, there must be, if there is another type of shock, like if it is not responding to fluids, then the primary goal of drug therapy is correct decreased tissue perfusion. So there are two types of drugs, vasopressor drugs like epinephrine, which can achieve and your aim should be achieve and maintain mean arterial pressure are between 60 to 65 mmHg. Reserved for patient unresponsive to other therapy. Vasodilator therapy like nitroglycerin is for cardiogenic shock and nitroprusside is for non-cardiogenic shock. Again, the aim is to achieve mean arterial pressure between 60 and 65. There is another type of shock which is cardiogenic shock when the cardiac pumping activity is not working. And the most important cause here is MI. So you should ensure that you should restore the myocardial blood flow, and that is through thrombolytic therapy, angioplasty, and emergency revascularization. If it is valvular, some valvular pathology, then you should valve replacement. And cardiogenic shock, there should be hemodynamic monitoring, and the drug therapy is like diuretics to reduce preload and circulatory assisted devices like intra-aortic balloon pump and ventricular assisted devices. For septic shock, the management is fluid replacement up to 6 to 10 liter of isotonic crystallites or 2 to 4 liter of colloids to restore perfusion. And of course, it must be accompanied by hemodynamic monitoring. And the accompanying thing with this is, as contrary to the hypovolemic shock, the vasopressor drug therapy is also required. Vasopressin for patient refractory to vasopressor therapy. In septic shock, although its role is controversial, but intravenous corticosteroid is also required if the patient is not maintaining BP despite fluid resuscitation and vasopressor therapy. And of course, as the name indicates, it is due to septicemia. There must be broad spectrum antibiotic after obtaining culture. Before you take culture and then start broad spectrum antibiotic. There's another drug, rotocogim alpha, new drug for septic shock. The glucose level should be maintained more or less than 50 milligram. Stress ulcer prophylaxis with histamine, H2 blocker, or with PPI. Deep venous thrombosis with the um, low dose unfractionized heparin or low molecular weight heparin. For neurogenic shock and spinal cord injuries, the spinal stability is important, and the treatment of hypotension and bradycardia with vasopressor drugs and atropine. Whenever there is bradycardia, you should uh, give vasopressors and atropine. Fluid must be partially used for hypotension because there is a lot of fluid there. It is only pooling in the vessels, and monitor for hypothermia. Whenever there is anaphylactic shock, especially it occurs in clinical settings, you should be ready for management with epinephrine, which is drug of choice for anaphylactic shock, and diphenhydramine. And you should maintain a patent airway. You should nebulize a bronchodilator, and you should be ready for endotracheal intubation. Aggressive fluid replacement is there, and steroid if significant hypotension persists after 1 2 hours of aggressive therapy. So for anaphylactic shock, you should remember epinephrine is drug of choice, and you should maintain a patent airway with bronchodilators. And if it is not possible, you should be able to intubate the patient. And there is, if not responsible, you should give steroids. So the goal for the patient is, and the management of shock is assurance of adequate tissue perfusion first, restoration of normal or baseline BP, and return or recovery of organ function, avoidance of complication for prolonged state of hypotension. How you will evaluate these goals? You should go for normal or baseline investigation like ECG, BP, and central venous pressure. You should check the temperature, and again you should check for dry and warm skin. It is the end point of paralysis. And you should, of course, any shock patient should be catheterized, and the aim is more than 0.5 ml per kg per hour of urinary output is mandatory. That is the end point for resuscitation. And there should be a normal respiratory rate with SpO2 of more than 90, and verbalization of fear and anxiety. If the patient can express its fear and anxiety, he is normally breathing, his saturation is more than 90, urine output is 0.5 ml, he has, or rather she has a warm, dry skin, normal temperature, and normal baseline investigation, then it is end. So the take home message is, whenever the pathophysiology we have discussed already, whenever you see a patient with shock, first of all, with brief previous history, you should determine which type of shock is this, whether it's cardiogenic, it's anaphylactic, whether it is a hypovolemic shock, and you can easily recognize if you take history and you examine the patient, and accordingly you should treat that patient. Thank you very much for